Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever tried a diet, a detox, or some intense new fitness regimen only to find yourself right back where you started, or maybe even worse off? Well, research suggests your failure wasn't your fault at all. In fact, it was the intended result. Today, this explainer is unpacking the multi-billion-dollar diet and fitness industry. We're going to dive into research that outlines a deliberate, highly calculated playbook designed to monetize your insecurity and keep you coming back for more.
Here is the agenda for today's explainer. First, manufacturing the flaw. 2. The pseudoscience illusion. 3. The cycle of failure. 4. The digital dysmorphia engine. And finally, reclaiming the body. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Manufacturing the flaw. Pathologizing normal biology. Before an industry can sell you a cure, the sources argue they have to convince you that you have a disease in the first place.
Let's look at the fascinating and honestly entirely manufactured history of cellulite. Biologically speaking, this is a completely benign secondary sex characteristic. It is found in the vast majority of post-pubescent females. It's quite literally just how skin and fat structures interact. But look at this timeline. The term was coined in the late 19th century, but then it got weaponized in 1933 by a French cosmetics magazine called Votre Beauté. Because of course, who else would a 1930s beauty magazine would look at perfectly normal body fat and label it toxic flesh? Fast forward to today, and fixing this completely invented sickness is the massive engine behind an $18 billion prestige beauty industry.
Notice how the industry uses language to actively scare you? To sell you science fiction-like machines and incredibly expensive creams, they can't just call it normal body fat, right? So they use these pathologized marketing terms like genoid hydrolipidystrophy or edematous fibrosclerotic paniculopathy. Wow! It sounds like a terrifying medical emergency. But the true clinical reality is so mundane. It's simply the normal herniation of subcutaneous fat lobules bound by connective tissue. There is zero disease here. So why do they do this? By framing a normal, healthy body as a deficient before state, marketers are deliberately triggering your brain's neurological threat response. In a survey by ASICS, a staggering 80% of participants reported feeling demoralized just after looking at standard fitness transformation imagery. And that psychological distress, it isn't an accident. It's the product. Once consumers feel insecure and demoralized, the industry can instantly monetize that pain by swooping in with a quick fix. Moving on to Section 2. The pseudoscience illusion, regulating risk. Let's peel back the curtain on this massive weight loss market and its incredibly dangerous reliance on pseudoscience. You've absolutely seen this phrase printed on almost every single supplement bottle, right? Well, this is the direct result of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, or DSIGA. This ubiquitous little legal disclaimer is actually a massive structural loophole. Incredibly, it allows manufacturers to just bypass the FDA's rigorous safety and effectiveness checks. They don't actually have to prove their product works, or frankly, even that it's entirely safe, before they put it on a store shelf and start marketing it to you.
So the crucial point here is how they use what are called structure-function claims. Since they can't legally claim to cure a disease without FDA approval, they'll say their pills support fat metabolism, or maybe enhance internal detoxing. They present these products as highly effective therapeutic miracles, but they are completely legally insulated from the requirements of actual medical science. It's essentially selling a promise with zero required clinical backing.
Take fat burners and detox teas as prime examples. They're heavily marketed as natural ways to shed pounds with minimum effort and maximum results. But according to the clinical research in our sources, the reality is pretty alarming. Fat burners, which are usually loaded with unregulated stimulants and green tea extracts, have actually been linked to severe hepatotoxicity, which is just the medical term for acute liver damage. And what about those detox teas? They're mostly just senna-leaf, which is a really harsh laxative. Our liver and kidneys already perfectly detox the human body naturally. Drinking these teas doesn't burn fat, it just forces severe fluid loss, leading to dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and chronic laxative dependence.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cycle of failure, engineered to break. If these products are dangerous and they don't actually work, how does the industry survive? The sources point straight to their core business model. 95%. That is the staggering failure rate of diets. Think about that for a second. If 95% of the cars rolling off an assembly line didn't work, that company would go out of business instantly. But in the weight loss industry, a permanently cured patient is a lost customer. This 95% failure rate isn't some unfortunate accident. It is a highly profitable, perfectly self-sustaining system.
Here is exactly how this builds biologically.
When you go on a crash diet, which is step 1, extreme calorie restriction, your body doesn't know you're just trying to look good for a beach vacation. It literally thinks you are starving to death. So step 2, it triggers a metabolic slowdown to conserve energy, and you often lose metabolically active muscle in the process. When you inevitably can't sustain the starvation and go back to normal eating, your depressed metabolism leads to step 3, rapid weight regain, often leaving you heavier than when you started. But here is the absolute genius of the industry, step 4. Instead of blaming the biologically impossible diet, the system encourages you to blame yourself.
How many times have you thought to yourself, I just didn't try hard enough, or I gave up too soon? The industry brilliantly shifts the blame for these biological failures entirely onto your perceived lack of willpower. This traps consumers in what psychologists call cognitive rumination. You repeatedly blame yourself, you feel intense regret, and you give up on actually sustainable habits. That misplaced self-blame preserves the brand's reputation, and it perfectly primes you to open your wallet again the very next time a new miracle wellness trend pops up on your feed.
Section 4. The Digital Dysmorphia Engine, Algorithmic Manipulation. Now add modern social media to this mix, and the whole process is turbocharged, transforming our screens into engines of digital dysmorphia.
Social media platforms utilize proprietary algorithms that are mathematically optimized for user engagement, definitely not user well-being. Researchers have identified specific psychological traps here. First, you have the view one, see more effect. If you pause on just one fitness video, your feed is instantly flooded with extreme dieting diaries. Second is morbid curiosity. This is where algorithms actively exploit your impulse to look at triggering content, relentlessly feeding you more of it just because you lingered for a millisecond too long. And tragically, we see the from helpful to unhelpful pipeline. Users actively searching for body positivity or eating disorder recovery are often aggressively steered right back toward harmful, restrictive content by the algorithm's back-end indexing.
But the data shows that what you are looking at on those feeds often isn't even real to begin with. The vast majority of fitness influencers are using filters, AI enhancements, and extreme image editing. Furthermore, many of these seemingly flawless, ultra-lean physiques are actually fueled by undisclosed anabolic steroid use. So you end up comparing your real, breathing, perfectly functional body to a physically impossible illusion. Research in our source material summarizes this harsh sociological truth perfectly. The physical ideal presented by social media is not a reflection of health. It is a chemically and digitally manufactured commodity designed to drive consumer insecurity. Let that sink in. These images are quite literally tools, carefully crafted to keep audiences perpetually insecure so they keep buying into the wellness industry's ecosystem. Section 5. Reclaiming the body, function over aesthetics. So how do we escape this? Let's shift to the solution and talk about how we can fundamentally change our perception to break free from this exploitative loop.
The paradigm shift required here is profound, but it is also beautifully simple. We have to stop viewing the human body as a flawed, aesthetic display object, something that constantly needs visual tweaking, shrinking, and fixing. Instead, the research suggests honoring the body as an incredible functional mechanism. Your body is an instrument for experiencing the world, not an ornament to be judged by algorithms and marketers.
And there actually is an evidence-based alternative to the destructive crash diet cycle. It's called the Health at Every Size or HAES framework. This approach prioritizes sustainable, weight-neutral health behaviors. We're talking about things like joyful movement, getting adequate sleep, and eating balanced nutrition over intentional weight loss efforts that, as we now know, fail 95% of the time and cause real physiological harm. It focuses entirely on genuine markers of wellness rather than rigid, unattainable aesthetic baselines.
But a quick word of caution from the analysts: the diet industry is incredibly adaptive. As consumers start catching on, these companies are actively co-opting progressive, body-positive language. They are rebranding the exact same restrictive diets and high-churn products as gut health resets, hormonal rebalancers, or metabolic support. Please, don't be fooled by the new packaging. If it promises a quick physical transformation through restriction, it is the exact same playbook.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought to consider today. Think about all the mental space, the emotional energy, and the financial resources you might have spent over the years trying to fix a body that an industry simply told you was broken. If your body's true purpose is purely functional, to help you live, move, and experience life to the fullest, what would you do today if you completely stopped treating it like a flawed project? The very moment you divest from their system, you reclaim your power. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.